I'm going to introduce Dow Constantine. He is the King County Executive, which is King County, Washington. And he has been outspoken about the environment, public transit, and government reform. Under his leadership, King County Metro expanded service and increased rider comfort to meet the needs of more than 400,000 daily customers. Dow placed the nation's largest order for battery-powered buses, yay, and set the course for Metro to become a zero-emission transit fleet. Dow was a popular politician elected twice to the Washington State House of Representatives and once to the state Senate. He was appointed to Kings County Council by then Mayor Greg Nichols and won elections into office 4 times. As the Sound Transit Board Chair, Dow led the 3-county agency in creating the Regional Light Rail Expansion Plan, strongly endorsed by voters in 2016. Okay.
So thank you all for inviting me today, and thank you to Lee for giving folks a preview of what we're going to talk about. First of all, you see Vancouver and Seattle in this video. You do not yet see Portland in the video, but that's because we started our first conference by focusing on the economic commonality across this international border and what can we do to reinforce our opportunities there. And ultimately, I think that we would want to then expand high-speed rail to Portland, which is to the south of Seattle and considerably farther, I think, than Vancouver is to the north, but it would put my county, King County, and its county seat, Seattle, right at the center of this Cascadia corridor. Thanks for inviting me to speak today at the panel. A bit more about me. So I'm the elected executive of Martin Luther King County. It is, as I said, the county seat is Seattle. We have 39 cities, 2.2 million residents, and we are at the heart of a metropolitan region, central Puget Sound metropolitan region, which is, depending on where you draw the lines, 3.5 or 4 million people. We are privileged, I think, to have to be punching above our weight economically. We have some of the world's leading businesses headquartered in our little corner of the country, and that has helped us do some remarkable things in recent years. Like many public officials, I'm a lawyer, but I am not only a lawyer, I also have a background in urban planning, and that has really informed a lot of my work and my keen interest in shaping the built environment to help improve the quality of life in our communities. The thing I've always tried to communicate to people is that transportation investments are not supply trying to satisfy demand. The transportation investments we make, the transportation we build, creates the land use with which we will then live. And that was true when we built our streetcars and created the little neighborhoods of our region. And then it was true when we pulled up the tracks and created the interstates that then define our land use after the war, and that we're now struggling to deal with economically, environmentally, and in terms of traffic congestion. And it will be true with the rail investments that we are making today and will be making over the next few decades. And that's what's exciting. The people have caught the vision, that they understand that these investments do not happen in isolation, nor are they simply following the whims of people, that they are creating the way people live their lives. As was mentioned, as King County Executive, I'm the head of Metro Transit. King County Metro has about 400,000 boardings a day and growing rapidly, and we're very fortunate to have been named the best large transit agency in North America by the American Public Transit Association this year. I'm also the former chair of the board of directors of Sound Transit, which is our regional transit authority, and it covers that whole metropolitan region, not just my county, the urban areas of the 3 central Puget Sound counties. And in November 2016, voters approved rather handily a measure that would finally fund what has been called one of the most ambitious transit expansions the country has ever seen. We were competing for attention with a Los Angeles light rail measure that was considerably larger in sheer dollars, but on a per capita basis, we still win. We called it Sound Transit 3. It was the third phase of our rollout of light rail. And Sound Transit 1 and 2 had been successful in really getting us started. Sound Transit 1 was advertised really as a starter kit. Sound Transit 2 began our expansion. But Sound Transit 3 ended up being the whole enchilada. In sum, when we count in financing, money coming from various sources, a $54 billion transit expansion approved on the November 2016 ballot. Now, it was that big because we're way behind. It took us a lot of time to get to that point. And I say these things because I think it informs what we're going to need to do in order to be able to build high-speed rail in our part of the country and probably in other parts as well. But, you know, it was when I was a child growing up in Seattle that voters twice rejected building a rail system for our region. It was largely funded by the federal government. It was a relatively small local contribution. But what happened was the voters voted down twice, so the money went off to Atlanta to build MARTA, which I had the privilege of writing a couple weeks ago, cursing the entire way that we'd been without this rail system my entire life. That stuck with me, and that's why I was so determined to make this thing happen. We think of Sound Transit 3 as both a companion to and a precursor to our high-speed rail system because, well, for one thing, the critics and the doubters that we will encounter along the way to high-speed rail will run the same playbook that our opponents on the light rail system ran in the late 60s and again this last time. And we will have to have answers. How will we pay for this? How can we assemble the political will to do something this big? How can we get the public behind this effort? Well, the questions were many, and it took a lot of hard work when we finally were able to push this across the finish line. With Sound Transit 3, again, by way of example, we took our case to the voters in November 2016 and won during an election where many other parts of this country, depending on your perspective, were either turning rightward or turning backward. And it was an odd sense to be on the stage claiming credit and victory for this big thing at the very moment that they were announcing the results of the presidential election. The very moment. Mixed feelings I had. But, you know, the key to our success was our ability to create a broad coalition, business and labor, environmental groups, and social justice organizations. And we competed for and received the support of our region's biggest employers, most pivotally, Microsoft. And I want to thank Delise Shoemaker, I want to thank Brad Smith, president. They came through, they understood not only that this was important for them and their employees, but for the future of our region, that they intended to make their home over the long term, that we had to finally make these infrastructure investments. But also Amazon and Expedia and Costco all stepped up and ranked among our biggest donors to the campaign. And as a result, many of our region's businesses and business leaders are justifiably interested in being at the table as we make the tough decisions about getting this thing built. They want to be part of that because I think that you know, we're going to see more and more that this is not going to be a merely public endeavor, that we are all going to be together building the light rail and building the high-speed rail that we need to be able to compete globally. And we're engaging them differently than we have in the past. One surprising dynamic we encountered, and this is, I think, very important to, you know, getting this conversation rolling about high-speed rail in our Cascadia region. As we started to put out the initial light rail plans, there was a negative correlation between the modesty of the plans and their support. We thought that if we did something that was relatively inexpensive and not too ambitious, that people would go okay and get behind it. In fact, people wanted more. They had seen light rail, they had seen the rest of the world, they were done waiting, and they wanted more rail to more places and yesterday. And so we had to recalibrate. And we had to decide to go big or go home. And so the immediate response of the public to our March 2016 draft was almost unanimous: go back to the drawing board. So we crafted a larger final plan, more than doubling our total system to 116 miles of rail adding infill stations, adding bus rapid transit, reaching the cities of Everett in the north and Tacoma in the south, and Issaquah, the home of Costco in the east, and Redmond, the home of Microsoft in the east, and the major Seattle communities of Ballard and West Seattle in the west. And we crafted it to reach, and for those of you who follow more than transportation, you know, every region has a plan of how it's going to evolve. Well, we took that plan of all the major centers and the minor centers, the places where we wanted the housing and employment, and we created a high-capacity transit plan right on top of that so that we reach each place that people are going to have to get to be able to live successful lives in our region. And, you know, so one lesson, think big, dream big. The other lesson, have the grit and determination to see it through. We had a few natural advantages in the campaign trail, which we will need once again when we take on the challenge of high-speed rail. But one of the advantages was that we opened our university link to the University of Washington from downtown right before the election. It just worked out that way. And people saw it, caught the vision, understood that this was something they really needed, and a lot more folks got on board. Second, another part of the equation was selling the community building potential. So it wasn't just about the transportation and isolation, but what this could mean in terms of the development of our communities and the ability of people to afford housing and be close to employment. Third, we did, speaking of employment, link all the major work sites in our region, the places where people were trying to get while they're sitting in traffic. So there's a station right at the main Microsoft campus. There's a station, there will be a station where Costco's headquarters is. The Boeing plants, there's a station at the major Boeing plant in Everett, and Expedia, Amazon, and others. But as an urban planner, there's much more of a vision than just creating homes to allow people to use transit. We want to connect neighborhoods to major employers, educational opportunities, and, you know, the other good things the region has to offer, including sports and entertainment. So as we built those new transit facilities, affordable housing is also part of the equation. I know there's a lot of discussion about TOD. The rail investments are required to provide room for equitable transit-oriented development, economically diverse communities, so that not just those who are fortunate, but everyone can have access to all the region has to offer. Our own transit agency's corridor planning policy requires that we consider TOD in alignments, land acquisitions, station layouts, and project funding. Our funding plan includes $20 million for a revolving fund that supports the construction of affordable housing, and by law, at least 80% of the surplus property from the development of our system has to be offered to affordable housing developers, and 80% of the units in the development have to be affordable to people making 80% or less of median income, so conveniently 80-80-80. In many ways, projects like Sound Transit 3 have moved the bar higher for major infrastructure initiatives in our region. Often now I hear people look at a problem like homelessness or the decline of our waterways and the challenge of the, we need a Sound Transit 3 for blank. It's like we need a Marshall Plan for blank. So we have created a paradigm that we're now going to have to live with. We have to show that our proposal will benefit people across the spectrum, as we will have to show for high-speed rail. We have to bring everyone to the table. This is not just a few of us, Microsoft and me, hatching things in a vacuum. We have to have everyone buying into the vision. And you could kind of call this the recipe for major infrastructure investments. Get the funding lined up, public authority, private and public-private partnerships. The planning, articulating the scope, schedule, and budget, and understanding what the hunger is in the public for this stuff. Agency, deciding who it is who's going to be in the driver's seat and ultimately have responsibility for delivering. And then we need that coalition of the willing. We need everyone to be on board and making it happen. Our major employers and landowners are critical to building our region's capacity to competently partner with the private sector and to bring new financing and delivery models to bear. Our job is to open up our public agency to be able to receive new and innovative and challenging ideas to deliver more and deliver it faster. I want to let you know in closing, as we designed this region-wide light rail system, we not only created it to serve all the major nodes, but we created it with the notion that we would be able then to accommodate high-speed rail coming to either just the center of Seattle or to Everett in the north and Tacoma in the south, so that although one might not take the light rail system end to end, because it is a long distance between those places, well over 60 miles as the crow flies, you would be able to go to Everett and fan out using high-capacity transit and then local bus transit to all the places you need, or to downtown Seattle, or to downtown Tacoma. It has been planned ahead of time, anticipating that Microsoft would start this conversation, so thank you, Dali, for doing that. And I believe that our region is in a very strong position, notwithstanding its relatively small population compared to California, to be able to push ahead and create our high-speed rail system to contribute to the national effort. I want to thank you for having us here today, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation. Thank you so much.